On a quiet Birmingham street, one house stood apart, curtains always drawn, no comings or goings. Neighbors assumed privacy, never suspecting the truth behind those blinds. Inside, a secret world thrived, crime, fear, and exploitation hidden in plain sight. One evening, smoke drifted from the house. A neighbor called the fire brigade. Firefighters broke down the door expecting a routine fire. Instead, they found a cannabis farm, wires dangling, hydroponic lights buzzing, hundreds of plants. The heat was stifling, the air thick with the smell of marijuana. But the real shock was in the corner, two terrified barefoot young men. They spoke no English, looked malnourished, and were clearly afraid. The firefighters realized this was more than a drug operation. It was human trafficking. The men were prisoners, forced to tend the crop, locked inside for months. Their rescue was the first thread in unraveling a vast criminal network. The men were taken to safety, given food and medical care. With a translator's help, their story emerged. They were from Vietnam, promised restaurant jobs in the UK. A man arranged their travel, charging thousands of pounds. On arrival, their passports were taken and they were locked in the house. The restaurant job was a lie. Their new life was tending cannabis, trapped in debt and fear. They had no way out, no contact with the outside world. Their discovery would expose a hidden empire of exploitation. The house on the corner was just the beginning. What seemed ordinary was a front for modern slavery. The neighbors, shocked, realized how little they truly knew. The authorities now faced a much bigger problem. This was not an isolated case. It was a symptom of something nationwide. The secret world behind the curtains was about to be revealed. The Birmingham case was a breakthrough for police across the UK. They'd seen a pattern: suburban houses rented with cash, fake names, strange electricity use, and a constant humming sound. These were cannabis farms, run by a single, organized criminal network. Operation Silent River was launched, a task force uniting police from major cities. Their mission: map the network, trace its leaders, and dismantle its operations. The network rented homes under false identities, bypassed electricity meters, and created fire hazards. This was no small-time operation. It was a sophisticated international business. Each house was a factory, producing crops worth tens of thousands every few months. The profits, millions each year, were laundered through nail salons, car washes, and supermarkets. The criminals built a hidden empire, treating people as disposable assets. The network's reach was vast, its methods ruthless. The police realized they were up against a criminal machine. The discovery in Birmingham gave the crime a human face. Operation Silent River was their chance to strike back. The investigation would reveal just how deep the river of exploitation ran. The silent network was about to be exposed. The network's leaders saw themselves as businessmen, not gangsters. Their business model: exploitation and risk avoidance. They never visited the farms, using vulnerable migrants as a disposable workforce. Poor Vietnamese were lured with promises of good jobs, then trapped in debt and fear. The journey to the UK cost up to £30,000, an instant, crushing debt. Victims were smuggled in, their documents seized, and their freedom stolen. Once in the UK, they became gardeners, locked in houses, tending crops for months. They slept on dirty floors, ate barely enough, and lived in squalor. The traffickers controlled them with threats. Escape meant arrest or harm to their families. If a crop failed, the debt grew. If they resisted, their families were threatened. One victim said, "If I stop working, they don't feed us. My family still owes the debt." Fear and isolation kept the gardeners silent and compliant. The traffickers' power was absolute. The business of slavery was run with corporate efficiency. The victims were invisible, their suffering hidden behind locked doors. The network thrived on their silence, but the truth was starting to surface. The victims came from all walks of life: young men, women, even children. They dreamed of helping their families, but found only captivity. Life as a gardener was lonely and terrifying. Isolated, they worked long hours under artificial lights, losing all sense of time. The houses were filthy, with no proper facilities. The plants were valued more than the people growing them. One man recalled, "The plants were more valuable than my life." Fear was constant, of traffickers, police, fire, and for their families back home, depression and trauma were common. Escape was nearly impossible. No money, no documents, no English. The debt only grew, making freedom a distant hope. Most endured, hoping for a day that never came. Their suffering was hidden, their voices unheard. The nightmare continued, house after house. Trapped and voiceless, some victims found ways to document their pain. Police found hidden diaries and notes during raids, heartbreaking windows into their suffering. Written in Vietnamese, they spoke of pain, confusion, and longing for freedom. One diary asked, "Why did I get beaten up and forced to work?" Another note, in broken English, pleaded, "Take what you want, please don't hit me, I do not know English." These writings revealed the deep trauma and fear the victims endured. The diaries became powerful evidence for police, showing the brutality of the traffickers. They were more than evidence, they were cries for help, desperate to be heard. Even in darkness, the need to tell their story survived. For investigators, these notes were a stark reminder of the real victims. The gardeners were not faceless criminals, they were people, desperate for rescue. Their words cut through the silence of the hidden world. Their stories demanded justice. After months of investigation, Operation Silent River prepared to strike. 14 key locations were targeted, farms and ringleaders' homes across the UK. At dawn, police teams moved in, smashing down doors and storming properties. Inside, they found cannabis plants, dangerous wiring, and terrified gardeners. Translators explained to the victims, the police were there to help. Over 130 arrests were made, dozens identified as modern slavery victims. Drugs, cash, and false documents were seized. The network was thrown into chaos. The ringleader was caught at Heathrow, trying to flee with a forged passport and cash. The operation struck at every level, from low-level workers to the top. The hidden empire was collapsing. For the victims, it was the first step toward freedom. The traffickers faced justice at Birmingham Crown Court. The case was complex, but the evidence was overwhelming. Financial records, phone data, and victims' testimony, diaries and notes revealed the true horror of the network's crimes. 6 key figures, including the leaders, were found guilty of human trafficking and conspiracy. The convictions were a landmark, sending a clear message: exploitation would not be tolerated. The men who profited from misery now faced long prison sentences. For victims and police, it was a moment of relief. But fear lingered. Many victims were too afraid to testify, worried for their families in Vietnam. The gang's threats extended across borders. Even after rescue, the shadow of fear remained. Justice was served, but the scars endured. The full story of the network's cruelty may never be told. Operation Silent River was a major victory, but the fight continues. The demand for cannabis remains high, the illegal market is worth billions. For every network dismantled, others rise to take its place. Just a month after the convictions, another house was raided, another victim found, another story of exploitation. The business model of slavery persists, fueled by poverty and demand. Operation Silent River exposed the scale of modern slavery in plain sight. Behind closed doors, people are still being bought, sold, and forced to work. Police raids help, but they're only part of the solution. To stop the hidden river, we must address poverty and the illegal drug market. Until then, the river of exploitation will keep flowing, silently beneath our feet.